I'm Lindsay,
I'm Austin.
And I'm Joe from PopXcast,
a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network.
Just like the show you're listening to now.
The opinions expressed are those of each individual host.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready because geekiness begins in
3,
2,
1.
Drive safe out there, and welcome to episode 147 of Better Podcasting. On today's show, we discuss headphones for podcasting.
In this week's Better Podcasting download, we set our scopes on a brand new way to get your audio out.
That was so bad, Steven. And finally, in this week's Better Podback, we take your feedback, including answering the question, how the heck does Steven multitrack?
Lauren, start the show now. I'm gonna multitrack you.
Welcome to Better Podcasting, a show where we talk about podcast tips, tools, and best practices to help you succeed with your podcast. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we podcast purely out of the love and fun of it. Podcasting is our hobby, and we recognize that it's yours too. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. Here's your host for the show, Stephen John Drew and Stargate Pioneer.
Welcome to episode 147 of Better Podcasting. I am Stephen John Drew, and with me, of course, is Stargate Pioneer.
Woohoo! We got a brand new episode of Better Podcasting tonight, and I need it. It was one of those days at work, you're like, I just can't wait to get out of work. I can't wait to get out of work because I get to podcast tonight. And then you're thinking, oh, I might not get to go home to podcast tonight. I hope Steven's not mad. I got to get out of here. Bye, boss. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, I would have just, set up my Amazon Voice Services device and she would have co-hosted. It would have been amazing.
I think that would be better than you co-hosting.
Fair enough. Yes, we're going to talk about the latest in the world of podcasting, as well as hopefully give you a few tips to help make your podcast a little bit better. And one of the ways we like to do that is kicking off our show with a how I saved my podcast story, or a how I could have saved my podcast story. For those of you who are new to the show, thank you for joining us. But what it is we like to turn the floor over to you and let you tell us how have you saved your podcast. So if you had something go wrong and you ended up being able to fix it, let us know how you've saved your podcast. And the reason here isn't to publicly shame you, no, it's so that your advice can help somebody else. That's how we all learn here. Fun fact, those people who charge lots of money for podcast consulting, guess what? They once had to learn themselves too. And so we want to give you that opportunity to share that knowledge. SP, what do we have in this segment this week?
For the How I Could Have Saved My Podcast Story segment on Better Podcasting this week, we have a Reddit post from Far King Neckbeard, and this was posted on the podcasts subreddit titled Losing Favor in Podcasting. So here is his post. Quote, "Hey guys, I'll try not to ramble or self-promote too much, but I could do with some help. Basically, 2 years ago, I started a podcast in which I host various friends, and they would bring in a thing and we would discuss or rant about it. For example, neither me nor my guest for an episode drink alcohol, so he brought in a bottle of gin. Ooh, gin. And we traded being sober stories. I had a great time with it, and it was quite well received in its small audience. I tried a second block of recordings, but it got difficult owing to everyone's availability. So this year, I opted to reboot as a solo podcast. Those with a six-pack memory may even remember me making help posts then. Essentially, my idea was to have a general discussion podcast with obvious preference to my interest areas, such as alternative music, wrestling, and sport, in a similar vein to Rooster Teeth, Pod Idiots, etc., but on my own a la Chris D'Elia and Bill Burr. I've been doing it for a few weeks now, and I still don't feel particularly confident on mic. History of stage fright probably doesn't help. And I'm struggling to find general topics that would be interesting to talk about, with enough content to talk about in my style of humor. I spoke with a friend today about it, and she suggested going back to themed releases again, like the first patch of recordings, and the as yet unreleased second recordings. But my worry with that is I'll retract back to really infrequent releases. I used to really enjoy podcasting and being able to get my opinions out. Plus, part of the appeal about a show was that it was hopefully going to be a way I could relieve some stress. But now I think it stresses me out more. I guess what I'm asking from you guys today is there a way I can salvage my podcast and or get more confident being on mic and writing? Or was I over ambitious to begin with? Unquote. So, Stephen, what I'm gathering from this post is that the podcaster has a comedy or storytelling podcast, but he never identifies the podcast clearly as any of it. And for more reference on that, you should probably go check out Better Podcasting #1, The Topic, or Better Podcasting number 132, What is Your Podcast Mission? And then sit down and reevaluate what your mission and topic will be, and that will help you create content, in my opinion. So that might take some of the stress out. As for the microphone confidence and stage fright, I'll tell you regular repetition helps get you better over time. We talked about practicing at one point in time on Better Podcasting number 126. And then knowing your material and prepping ahead of time also helps, even if it's just as simple as bulletizing your opinions on a Word document. And then perhaps I spoke about this last week, recording 1 to 3 episodes and then listening to them yourself before recording and re-releasing a show. And that, I think, will help get over the flow of the show and for you to be more comfortable on the microphone. So that's what I think, Stephen. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I think there's something that's easily overlooked in this is the fact that obviously the passion is there to podcast, right? That's something that in this post, the writer clearly illustrates that they're not sure about the topic. They're not sure about their mic skills. They're not sure about a whole bunch of other stuff, but they're still doing it, which means that they obviously have a passion for podcasting. So trying to refine that to make that the most fun for you is going to be the best way for you to try to save your podcast at this point. And I would suggest doing exactly what SP said, which is to go ahead and lay it all out. And I think that that's probably the best way that you can do that is if you are going to do themed release, which there's podcasts that totally do themed releases and they work fine. Even if you listen back to some of the Better Podcasting episodes we used to do, we used to often batch episodes together. It's something that if you go and you do that, then you can refine what you like and you can go, okay, I really like talking about different types of craft beers. So I'm going to do a 3-part series on craft beer. So you open up a spreadsheet and you go episodes 1, 2, 3 craft beer. I also really want to talk about the fact that I know this new thing about technology. So now I'm going to do episodes 4, 5, and 6 about technology. So you can go and pick these fun sort of arcs and topics, and hopefully that will bring the fun factor back in, which will keep your passion up, which should hopefully help your mic skills. Obviously, if you keep doing this and you feel like your mic skills and your stage fright is not going away, and you've tried other methods, there's a lot of great resources available for stage fright, then maybe it's time to look at going back to a co-hosted show or something, because it is really hard to do a solo cast if you're afraid to be behind the mic. But people do it and people get over it. But I think the best thing that you can do is try to refine what your goal is of your podcast and set those out with fun topics, because you got to have the fun. If you don't have the fun, you're not going to continue and you're not going to push through that stage fright.
I will say maybe not complete fun because there are some serious topics out there, but as long as you have the passion, right? So we talk about fun all the time on Better Podcasts, but as long as you have the passion, you keep up that passion, that's what's really important. And for us, our passion is fun.
Totally. Absolutely agree. At least that's what my contract says. But let's go ahead and move on to our main topic, which is some really techie headphone talk. You know, Stargate Pioneer, last I knew when I hacked your email, you were asked a question about headphones, weren't you?
I was not asked a question on email, so I'm kind of scratching my head over that. It was on a Discord chat that I was having. But
well,
yes,
there's also an email in your inbox that you missed.
Oh, okay. That's probably true because I have been incredibly busy this past week. But I was asked a question. SP, is there an episode of Better Podcasting that talks about headphones other than the Our Gear, quote unquote, episodes early on? Those early episodes mentioned noise isolation, not noise cancellation, but unless I missed it, you don't get into the specific models like you did for mics. And that was from Imperial Moonwalker on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2018. See, that is what we get on Better Podcasting. We get feedback from you, our listener, and we deliver. And we're going to talk about headphones. So although we've often discussed headphones for podcasting, we've never highlighted them as the main topic. We're going to highlight them right now. Welcome to Better Podcasting, Headphones Edition.
Fshing, fshing. I didn't pay for sound effects, so I have to do that myself.
We're so cheap. Yeah. When I first started podcasting, I was naive about headphones. I mean, I had a pair of Sony noise canceling headphones for airplane travel, which I think I donated actually to my son at some point because I'm never getting them back. But other than that, I was an open book as far as headphones were. And I've told this story a few times before, but if you happen to be new to Better Podcasting, I entered into podcasting through a community called Galactic Water Cooler, which is known as GWC. So if you ever hear me say GWC, that's what it is, Galactic Water Cooler. The GWC crowd had sourced a rather inexpensive headphone, and it was known as the Sennheiser HD201, which unfortunately now, after many, many years, is discontinued. And that's a shame because it was between $20 and $35, and you could get a great set of podcasting headphones to start with for most applications. I mean, if you were looking for that low entry level. However, I was using them. I got several pairs of the HD201, but when I needed to edit one holiday season with my entire family at my house, which I shouldn't have been editing, but I was at the time, I didn't know any better. I could not hear when somebody was running a vacuum in the room right next to me. And it was at that time that I started to investigate podcasting headphones. And honestly, Stephen, it's one of the reasons that drove me to start Better Podcasting. We've talked about that before between you and me. So we're going to get into podcasting headphones and what are studio monitoring headphones, because these are the type of headphones that you should be using when you podcast. Now, why is that? That is because they have a flat frequency response to more accurately represent the sound that you are hearing when you're monitoring it. This is important because your audio is going to be on a bunch of different speaker systems for your listeners. Some are going to be listening through earbuds. Some are going to be listening at work through their iPod dock. Some are going to be listening through their car speakers. So you want that flat frequency response to not over accentuate any specific band in EQ. And you want to use your headphones, in addition to being able to monitor the flat frequency response, you want to isolate the audio to just what you are trying to hear. So you don't want any outside influences on the audio. You just want to hear the audio that you are recording or that you are producing that you will post later to go out.
And this makes a big difference when you are editing. When you've had a pair of crummy little open sort of headphones, and then you go and you put a good pair of studio headphones on, it's amazing what you can hear more. And some of the subtleties in there, that there are some really good stereos and stuff available for consumers that they might pick up on.
Why would you use studio monitoring headphones? I mean, just to use them aside from the flat frequency response and to isolate the audio. Well, first of all, it's to separate the incoming sound from maybe your speakers from the microphone. So if you're connecting to somebody else, you're interviewing a guest, you have a co-host over the internet like Stephen and I do, you want to make sure that you don't have any sound that's being picked up by your microphone. That is called crosstalk. I mean, if you were in the same room, it would be called crosstalk. It's basically the same thing. And you have a great ability, if you podcast over the internet and you're the only one in your room, to isolate each track and not have that crosstalk. So one of the ways to do it is make sure your speakers are not on and that you're listening through studio monitoring headphones so none of that sound gets out and gets into the microphone. You also want to be able to clearly monitor the sound that is being recorded. In addition to the frequency response, which we've talked about already, you want to make sure that there's no ground loops in your audio, that buzzing sound that you might hear from time to time. You want to ensure that the recording is in fact recording. And I will say that I almost did a how I saved my podcast story, except for I think it's how I lost my podcast story, because Lauren, my co-host on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., episode number 253, her recording didn't record. It wasn't an audio issue, but you want to make sure that your actual sound is coming through on your recorder. And then also you want to make sure that ambient sounds like the dog barking, the lawnmower, motorcycles, sirens in the distance, that sort of stuff don't get picked up by your microphone either, and that is coming through your headphones. So you just want to make sure that.
I have a story about that just today. I was at home doing some recording for my day job, and I always record using my studio headphones because of the fact that I can pick up all of that stuff. And guess what? All of a sudden, as I was in sentence, what did I hear bleeding into the track? Apparently, my neighbor started up a pressure washer, so I had to wait and wrap that up a little bit later, but I could hear it clearly with my good headphones.
Yeah, that will prevent some mistakes from happening. Maybe some one-time recordings that you'll never get a second chance at. You can say, oh, just let's wait 2 minutes and we don't have that train in the background or whatever. So that is a benefit of using studio monitoring headphones. So, Stephen, now that we're going to use studio monitoring headphones, what are the traits of a good studio monitoring headphone?
Well, number one, let's go ahead and say comfort. Comfort is a huge part of picking out a pair of headphones because you're going to have them on your head. It's really important that you are comfortable in them. You want them to be tight, though, so that they are isolating some of that sound, but not so much so that they are hurting you as well. If they are too tight and pushing up against your ears and just other factors, sometimes what they're made with, they can run too hot. And when you're sitting there recording podcasts that are an hour, maybe editing for several hours or maybe even longer, you can imagine how much that will suck if they're hot and heavy.
Especially if it's in the summer months and you get the ear sweat going and stuff like that. I mean, it happens even with the best of these studio monitoring headphones. So you want to make sure that they're not creating more heat than you can dissipate for the time that you're going to be wearing them. Also, you're going to want to make sure that they have a good frequency response. Now, this will be somewhere between 10 megahertz and 30,000 megahertz or 30 kilohertz, whatever you want to say. And most humans hear from 20 megahertz to 30 kilohertz. So you want to make sure that you get most of that frequency response in as you're monitoring. You may not be able to hear it, but if you have the headphones that have the expanded frequency response, then you're going to be able to hear as much as you can possibly hear. So maybe you have a high whine or maybe a low bum, bum, bum. You want to make sure that you try to hear that in your headphones, and that'll give you the full breadth of frequency that you should be recording anyway. And as far as the cups, you want to make sure that they're closed. And why do I say this? Because I use a pair of semi-open headphones, the AKG K240s, which everybody says, oh, these are the best thing ever. And one of the reasons why people try these semi-open or open cups is because it's generally cooler because you have airflow in there. I'm here to tell you that you won't sound right, that you will make mistakes with your audio because you're not actually isolating the audio, and that you're not actually going to get as good of a sound as you will with a closed ear cup on your headphones. So my recommendation, and I believe the recommendation of Better Podcasting, is do not use semi-open or open cups on your headphones. Go with the closed cups on your headphones. Another differentiation of a good studio monitoring headphone is driver side. This is the actual size of the speaker that's in the ear cup. And you want to get it somewhere between 40 and 50 millimeters. That's just how big they come. Now, Stephen, if you're pumping that much sound through your ear cups, what kind of thing would you want to make sure that you are protecting against?
Of course, your hearing loss. You want to make sure you avoid that at all costs. Otherwise, it's kind of useless to have a pair of headphones if you can't hear.
That's right. So there is such a thing with the headphones known as sensitivity, and it is measured in sound pressure level, or SPL. You might see that on the specification of the headphones that you are looking at. Now, SPL is how efficiently an electrical signal is converted into an acoustic signal, and this is usually measured between 85 and 120 decibels SPL per milliwatt. Now, to provide some context, regular city traffic is around 80 dB SPL per megawatt. A shouting voice is around 105 dB, and a jet taking off is 130 decibels. Now, the pain threshold for noise is thought to be around 120 decibels. This depends from person to person. While the Occupational Safety and Health Administration in the United States warns of the dangers of hearing loss with prolonged exposures to an SPL of more than 85 dB. So you want to make sure that you're not really blasting your sound into your ears. So you want to make sure that you get a good representation of the sound without getting too loud. There's a couple other things that we have kind of already talked about. The noise isolation. So you want to make sure that the sound around you doesn't make its way into what you're hearing. And I will advise you against using active noise cancellation headphones. Why is that? It's because it can distort sound, and it can re-EQ the sound a little bit. It depends on from headphone to headphone. I realize that it deadens the noise around you, but it could also change the characteristics of the audio that you're monitoring. So that is an issue as well.
And I want to say that with my work, I've actually had a chance to use some of these noise canceling headphones and whatnot, and they're really good for something consistent. They're not great if you have loud people behind you, because they're really meant to remove like those rumbles of like a fan or something. And really, you know, other than that, they don't work that great.
Or an airplane. An airplane is a great place to use active noise cancellation headphones. So this is the last techie thing that we're going to talk about with the headphones, is a term called impedance. Now we're going to get in the electrical engineer in SP here. So impedance is a measure of electrical resistance and is displayed in ohms, which is the little upside down horseshoe thing. In the simplest terms, higher impedance means more resistance, which means more power is needed to drive the headphones. Headphones designed for mobile devices tend to have a lower impedance, below 32 ohms, so they use less power. Now, high-end and pro-quality headphones have very high impedance, like 300 ohms or more, so they require a dedicated amplifier to power them generally. So most of the headphones that we're going to talk about are not that good, but once you get into, like, I would say like the $250 to $300 range of headphones, you need to pay attention to the impedance. You might need a powered amplifier for it. So the downside to lower impedance headphones is that while they use a lower voltage, they require a higher current. Now, electrical current creates vibration, which in turn creates sound. And the result is that a lower impedance headphone may emit an audible background hiss, which is why when you have to turn your headphones up so much, you hear that sss in the background. Also, an impedance mismatch can cause this hiss and other performance issues. Mismatch can occur when using high impedance headphones with a smartphone or low impedance headphones with a high-end audio system. It's important to have the right type of headphones for the audio equipment you are using. Stephen, what is the last differentiation that we're going to talk about with headphones?
Well, first off, before we go to the last one, isn't there a little pill that you can take for impedance? Oh, sorry, that's something else. Never mind.
Right. Okay.
The last thing that we're going to say, of course, is sound quality. You want to make sure you have there's full, rich, and accurate representation of sound. And we want to make sure that we have that, because that does vary from headphone to headphone. And you definitely, as you start to experiment with different headphones, will hear the difference.
We will. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, those are the things that you're looking for as far as technical specifications and personal preferences. Which headphones would I recommend? Well, we'll go through a few here and you can decide for yourself, or if you happen to have another option, go ahead and leave us a comment and we'll talk about it on a future show. First one I'm going to talk about are actually the headphones I'm wearing right now. The Shure SRH 840s, and I love them. I really love, I can't believe how great these things are. So you can get them at $200. I got these on sale very rarely. I've only seen 2 sales since I started looking at headphones a few years ago. 2 sales at $150. I picked mine up at one of those sales. So the headphones I'm wearing right now are $150. Yes, that's expensive. But once you've sampled a lot of headphones, you know how great these things really are. They're the most comfortable pair I own. They have a great reproduction of the sound. They're great noise isolators. They generally keep the coolest of any of the headphones I have. They do have a detachable coiled cord. The cons, they are expensive, I'll admit that. And the ear cups do not swivel back and forth. They're pretty straight, but they do fold. So at least you can fold them up and take them in a little pack and put them in your backpack or whatever when you go on trips or back and forth to school or work or that sort of thing. So that is a plus. And the cons really, they're nothing. The pros outweigh the cons, in my opinion. I wrote an article on GonnaGeek.com a few years ago, basically podcast studio monitoring headphones. And my number one selection would still be one that I would recommend. And that is the Audio-Technica ATH M40X. You can get these on sale for about $70 around holiday season, whatever. They're regularly $100 US. This is all in US dollars, by the way. So some of the pros, it has 40 millimeter drivers, and it does reduce the bass of the M50X. We'll talk about the 50s in a bit. The ear cups only swivel one way, and they do have a flatter frequency response overall, not just the bass of the M50X. They are light. In my opinion, they're comfortable. They have good noise isolation. The cons I see with them is they only have 2 detachable cords. And some people claim that they're muddy when they listen to them. And I think I know why, because they're probably used to another headphone that I'm going to talk about in a second. Now, Stephen, you also have the M40X. So do you have any pros or cons you wish to discuss with these?
100% agree with your pros. They are light. They do sound good. They are comfortable. I will say that from my perspective, the folding aspect of them sometimes, because they fold in so many ways, such a great pro when you need it. However, when you don't need it, sometimes they could just get kind of stuck in each other and can be a little bit tough to get out, and you don't want to snap them. As well, I will say, and I know that in the Spectrum, they're pretty good for this, but they do run hot compared to like the Sures that you just mentioned before. I do, a little bit. Yeah, I find with my specific head that it was a noticeable difference between some Sures, not the ones we mentioned, I'll get there in a bit, and the ATH M40s. But overall, I'd be happy to recommend them, and I think that they are pretty good. A little heavier in the bass side of things than some of the other ones, but overall, very neutral, very neutral.
I think adding a little bass adds to the effect of not getting ear fatigue too much. But that's just me. Other people might be different. They might hear that bass and be like, oh, my ears are tired. So I get that. Also, both of us have recognized that the headband could be a smidge more padded. I mean, if you look at the M50X headphones, the M30X headphones, they're both more padded than the M40X. I don't know what Audio-Technica was thinking there. That the 40 should be their flagship headphones, and for studio monitoring. The 50s are more DJ style, and we'll get there in a second. But yeah, the headband could get a little bit more padding. So still, I would recommend the M40Xs wholeheartedly, especially if you can get them on sale. The other headphone that I will put in the top 2 of the article that I mentioned I wrote, and top 3 of what we're talking about right now, is the Sony MDR 7506s. These run, you can get them on sale for $60, $65, but they're in the $100 range, US dollars again. These are the standard for studio monitoring headphones. They have been for decades. These are old technology. It's tried and true. You simply really can't go wrong if you're looking for noise isolation and sound reproduction. Some of the cons of them, they're heavier because they're made with old design, with old materials. They don't have nearly as much composites or plastics as the newer headphones. They do tend to heat up even more than the M40X. Matter of fact, that was one of the reasons. These were the first studio monitoring headphones, quality ones, that I tried, and I loved them. But one of the things that got me looking at other headphones was the fact that they ran a little hot. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's got to be another one out there. There is no detachable cord to these. It's an attached cord, which can be good, I guess, but then actually you have to wrap the cord around the headphones because it's a coiled cord. You can't really wrap it around your hand or whatever and then put it away for shipping or for take with you or whatever. Also, I was looking on Amazon lately for studio monitoring headphones, and they have a very distinct profile. There are a ton of knockoffs on the style. It's like they went to the Sony manufacturing plant and they just took parts out of the bins. They brought them back to their place. They slapped their label on and they put it together. I can't speak to the speakers and to the quality, the build quality or anything, but they look exactly the same. And because of that I can't vouch for their quality or their reliability or their quality or the sound reproduction quality, I would say buyer beware. Just because they look like a Sony MDR 7506 doesn't mean they're as good as a Sony MDR 7506. Also, Sony itself has tried to modernize it, and it went with a headphone called the V6, which is still an okay headphone, but if you're looking for a good quality studio monitoring headphone, it is the MDR 7506 or one of the other ones that I mentioned, not the V6. Stephen, this next one that I'm going to talk about is very confrontational, I guess. There's been a lot of arguments and discussions about these. I personally love it, but I know a lot of people don't. And they're the Audio-Technica ATH M50X. They're really DJ headphones, but they're billed as studio monitoring headphones. These are more expensive than the 40s. They're more like the $120 to $170 range. Some of the pros, I will say, is they are very comfortable. I mean, extremely comfortable, probably more comfortable than the A40s that I'm wearing right now, just in terms of you put them on and it feels so soft and everything. They are portable because you can fold them down really tight. You get a full rich sound, and that probably has something to do with the 45 millimeter drivers. So you get more bass sound just because the speakers are big. Now the swiveling ear cups, we talked about that in the 40s. These swivel both ways, and talk about a tangle mess when you're trying to get them apart. Oh my gosh, those swivels can go every which way. I've learned to be careful and use them appropriately. I use these every day at work. These are the headphones that I take back and forth to work. They're so expensive that I don't keep them there, although I probably should. But I take them back and forth and I use them every day at work. And so I've learned how to use them. Not only does it come with 2 detachable cords, it comes with 3 detachable cords, like a shorter cord that you might use with a smartphone if it happened to have a 3.5 millimeter port, or an iPhone or something like that, like a 3-foot cord, and then a coiled 10-foot cord and a uncoiled straight 10-foot cord. So some of the cons, I'll just say the bass sound. I mean, I like it. I know a lot of people don't. They claim it's muddy. They can't hear it. Okay, I get it. I just prefer a bass sound. So I don't think it's a con, but I'll mention it because a lot of people think it's a con.
Full disclosure, by the way, back in his teenage days, SP was known as MC SP. So that's probably why he likes the bassier sound.
Not true. Totally not true. Was not into the music scene like you were, Stephen. And your brother, by the way. Oh my gosh, you two. Get you two in a sing-along. Matter of fact, sometime I'm going to have to come up there. We're going to go to a bar and I'm just going to listen to you guys sing, because eventually it's going to happen.
Pass.
So the last headphones that I'll mention here, and these are like the bottom of the line that I would recommend to a new podcaster right now, basically because the Sennheiser HD201s don't exist anymore. I mean, they exist, but they're so expensive that you might as well not get them. So they're the Audio-Technica ATH M30X. You can get these from $50 to $70. Some of the pros, they're actually cheaper than the 40s and the 50s. They might actually be in a store near you. If you happen to have a Guitar Center or a Best Buy, you might be able to find actual physical set of these at a store. They are also the cheapest headphones that I would recommend right now. Some of the cons, we talked about how the 40s and the 50s, the ear cup swivels. These don't. They swivel a little bit, like 15 degrees, but that's it. They don't actually fold in and out like you would a DJ style headphones, which means that if you take them off, you can't lay the ear cups up or down, and they just become really tight around your neck if you happen to have a short neck, or a regular neck, actually. They do have the most limited frequency response of all the headphones that I'm talking about. Doesn't mean that's bad. It just means it's limited on the top and the bottom end. And they do not have a detachable cord. So in that respect, they're like the Sony MDR 7506s. So I did use these for a while. I actually had them as my mowing headphones, and then my son needed a pair of headphones, and so I just gave it to him. Like, I really don't need them anymore. I've got more headphones that I could shake a stick at here, so go ahead, you can take them. And I haven't seen them since. So Steven, you've actually seen these in a store, talking about a store, right?
Yeah, they're on demo somewhere along the way, and I actually was considering buying them for work. And as soon as I heard them, I actually thought that they were noticeably lower quality sound than the M40s.
But they'd still be better than like your smartphone headphones or like the cheap headphones you get at Best Buy or something like that, right? So, I mean, if you only have $50 and you were looking for something, this would be the one that I would recommend.
Yeah, and you got to buy what fits your budget, and definitely will be better than what SP mentioned. And the last pair of actual headphones that we'll mention comes from the Steve and John Drew department, and that is the SRH 440 headphones with a major caveat. Now, I will start off by saying if you can get the 840s, just do the 840s, okay? The 840s, by all accounts, are better than the 440s. But on that note that we just spoke about, budget, you might find that the 440s might work out a little bit better. And the reason why is because the 440s do regularly come on sale. Now, if you are going to get the 440s, these are my go-to favorite pair of studio monitoring headphones. I find them to be more comfortable than the M40s. I find them just to be a little bit better sound than the Audio-Technica M40s, and I just like them overall. But if you are going to get the SRH 440s, I would suggest that you spend the money on buying the ear cups for the 840s, which are the ones that Stargate Pioneer talked about. And the reason why I mentioned that is twofold. Number one, they are memory foam cups as opposed to the ones that come with the 440s, and they're much more comfortable. But the second more important thing is that when I got them, I noticed a big difference in sound quality between the 840 cups, the pads, and the 440s that came with it. I think the 840s, just because of how they're built, they had a little bit better of a lower frequency than the default ones that came with it. And without the 840 cups, to me, the sound was a little bit thinner. And honestly, I would feel uncomfortable monitoring with it. Soon as I put the 840 cups on, was a significant difference. Build quality, from what I've seen, I don't own a pair of the 840s, but from what I've read, very similar. It's just that the 840s are a better product overall. So if you can afford the 840s, I would definitely suggest going that way. But sometimes the 440s have come on sale, and they've been a great pair of headphones for me. Of course, the cons are what SP mentioned with the 840s. There's no swivel on them. And realistically speaking, if you have to buy an extra product to put on the product brand new out of the box, it's worth considering. So that is indeed a con. As well, if you like the big long straight cords that come with like the Audio-Technica M40s, it's a little bit on the more pricey side for what it is. Yes, it's only like $15 to $20, but it's a cord. So yeah, you can buy a straight cord, but it is something that it's an added expense. But overall, they've done me well. But again, if you can do the 840s, I highly suggest you do the 840s.
Yeah, so glad I took the plunge and just went with the 840s. I think the padding and the ear cups were two of the reasons why I was like, Steven's tried those. I don't need to try it for better podcasting. I just want to go with the 840s. So glad I have. I might try another pair of headphones in the future that is similarly priced or better. But for now, these are great, and they're what I'm going to use. Steven, you don't use, when we record anymore, studio monitoring headphones, do you?
No, I don't. And that's because I use in-ear monitors. Whether it's because of their light nature or because you like to be fine like me. Okay, I'm not fine. You like to not have headphones on your head. You might be interested in IEMs. So we want to talk briefly about that. Now, the bottom line with IEMs is that to get amazing quality sound, you're looking at way more than you probably are as a hobby podcaster. And I would probably say looking way more than even the average makes money podcaster, because when you see on stage people who are using, famous musicians who are using IEMs, the thing is they've usually had custom molds made for these IEMs, these in-ear monitors, because they need to fit really well. They spend a lot of money on that. And also, it's important to note that musicians who are using these in-ear monitors are using them differently than most podcasters are for headphones. With headphones, you're looking to monitor generally the nuances, as SP talked about. With in-ear monitors and musicians, they want to be able to hear themselves or the band across a large crowd in an auditorium. There's a big difference. They're listening to hear these things as opposed to hear the subtleties or hear the room echo. They just want to be able to sing along with what's happening. So it's important to note that generally speaking, you're just not going to find, especially in the budget that you could spend on headphones, you're not going to find the same quality. So with that caveat, what is important with IEMs? Well, first off, let me say that from my experience, even just with the one pair of in-ear monitors that I've used, look for something that is going to offer the ability to have a variety of different ear tips. So, those are those little foam tips that you see on the end of headphones. And yes, some are foam, some are silicone, some are a bunch of other weird materials. This is something that every ear canal is different. And so you want to make sure you're able to adjust that. If you're not able to adjust that, you're not going to sort of be able to kind of poor person's represent that custom mold that I spoke about. At least if you can swap these out, what you're going to find is you can find the right fit for your ears. And that's going to help not only with comfort, but also with the sound that I spoke about a minute ago with the 440 cups. Remember how I said the cups made a difference in sound? That's the exact same process applied to your in-ear monitors. If you have something that is too large for your ear, you're probably going to find that it's really sort of muffled and a little bit bassy. But if on the flip side, you have something that is not giving a good fit, it's going to sound really tinny. So that was my attempt to do tinny. I couldn't do tinny, so that was my attempt.
Just turn up your treble all the way on your mixer for that channel.
That's true. I should have done that. So that's probably the number one thing that I would say is make sure that you're able to do that with the in-ear monitors. Now, what I want to say is that when you look at that frequency response with in-ear monitors compared to the headphones, generally speaking, and I'll go ahead and as I go through a few models, I will read out some of these frequency responses because generally speaking, you're not getting the same range that you do with headphones. One of the staples, the one that I ended up picking, is the Shure SE215s. These have been around for a while. They're fairly affordable. They're not the cheapest in the world, but they offer decent sound. A lot of people have tested them. And I will say that I basically got the quality that I expect from a Shure. They don't feel cheap. They don't feel like they're going to break on me. And even the foam padding that's come in there, I've had them for over a year now. And yes, I need to replace them, but they're not feeling like cheap foam. If you've ever used earplugs, like to sleep or whatever, after a couple nights, they feel like, okay, I got to throw these things out. That's not the case with these. They've lasted quite a while. The best part about this is that they come with a bunch of different tips that I mentioned. So you, by default, included with the SE215s, you have a plethora of different sizes and types to find the one that fits best for you. I've never found a pair of silicone tips that I've liked. I prefer the foam ones myself, but some people obviously do quite like them. One of the other pros with the SE215s is even though they're inexpensive, the pieces are actually detachable, so you can go and remove the cord from the actual earpieces themselves. Now, this is useful because if all of a sudden Shure goes and makes a new cord, you can go ahead and put that on. For example, like the longer corded version that they sell, or like the Bluetooth enabled one that they literally just came out with, or like the Lightning one that they also just came out with, or the 3.5 millimeter one that they made this past year with that actually has the microphone built in.
Mm-hmm.
Or the USB-C one that they've announced. Well, you get the drift. The nice thing is that all of these cords, if they make them, you can attach them to your IEMs, which is great. So you might have like the Bluetooth one. I could see myself one day wanting to, use that for just day-to-day activities. And I like how these sound. So I could just go ahead and swap out the cord, which would be really cool. Now, the cons with these is that honestly, the cable's pretty short. So I actually run these with an extension, especially given that IEMs in your monitors are generally meant to have the cord run behind your neck. So running behind my neck, down my chair, over to my sound mixer is a little bit of a ways to go. So obviously I'm going to need to use a longer cord, and honestly the cord that comes with it is not sufficient for that. And the upper range on the SE215s definitely lacking. Things like really subtle hiss, I'll hear that on my headphones, but not in my in-ear monitors. So that is a big disadvantage, of course. And I think you find that with most in-ear monitors, you just don't find that upper range.
I will say that I have tried some Bluetooth headphones with the silicone little ear tips, and those get extremely hot. And you have a bunch of earwax that builds up, which is one of the reasons I can't wear them. I also just can't wear them because the ear pressure really hurts my ear. And I have ear disease, so I just can't use them. But that was one thing that I noticed. If you're not used to the silicone inserts, and I know a ton of earphones are sold that way now, if you're not used to that, you might get a little overheated in your ears, just saying.
So I don't have any experience with ones I'm about to mention, but I want to go over quickly what you get by going up in range with in-ear monitors. The next level up from the 215s were shockingly the 315s. Now, they are very similar to the 215s, but they really have better drivers in them. I remember SP talking about drivers. Yeah, they have better drivers in them, and also a longer cord. Shure actually markets this as a high-definition micro driver and tune bass port, whatever that is. Now, one thing that I've seen with a lot of reviews when I've done that is that a lot of people say that the price that they cost versus the 215s don't really make them as worthwhile compared to the 215 cost versus the quality you get. So that's definitely worth noting. As far as frequency response goes, you're looking at 22 hertz to 18.5 hertz. Again, that upper frequency you're not getting. The ones above that are the SE425s, and those push the frequency response from 20 to 19. And this is where you get into the dual high definition drivers. There's actually a really good article that I found that sort of explains why this matters within headphones. And if you want to do that, you can head on over to geeks.link/drivers. And the moral of the story is it just makes for a better quality sound, especially when you're going from like a low range up to a high range. It's a lot more natural. So if you want to check that out, that's geeks.link/drivers with an S. Now, yeah, exactly. Overall, though, the reviews on the 425s say that there's a much smoother lower range and a much clearer treble. Now, we talked about Audio-Technica headphones earlier, so I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that there are indeed some IEMs put by Audio-Technica. And the numbering actually sounds very similar. Sort of the ones that run in line with the 215 price range is the Audio-Technica ATH E40s. These are really touted as having really good sound isolation. A lot of people talk about how good these sound, and they come with extra small, medium, and large tips, but apparently those tips are only the silicone tips. So with the Shure, you get some of the foam ones. Looks like here with Audio-Technica, they've gone all in on the silicone. The frequency response on these, though, are 20 to 20. So a little bit better frequency response, but as SP mentioned at the top, whole bunch of things contribute to the sound. So a lot of reviews that I've read say that the 215s barely beat them out, but I will say the ATH E40s I've seen on sale a lot more than I've seen the 215s. And I almost bought them, actually. I almost bought those over the 215s because they have really good reviews. And finally, the last thing that I want to mention, if you ever have looked at sort of higher range, a lot of the go-tos are the Westone, insert model number here. The Westone is a really reputable brand in IEMs. I went and I looked up some that ran about $12.99, and they were the W60 Westones, and they had a frequency response of 20 to 20. So really, again, comparing to headphones, you're not getting as high, as full of a range as you would find with headphones. And that's really why I wanted to look them up at the higher end of things, just to show how much more limited that frequency response is compared to headphones.
I mean, you're talking an IEM that's $1,299. No, we're not talking about $12.99. It's $1,299 US dollars for these Westone W60s. Most of the other ones that we've been talking about for the IEMs are in the 100 to 300 US dollar range. So this is definitely leaps and bounds in terms of cost better. Now, they don't have to be that expensive. If you want to go a little bit less expensive, might we have an option?
Chris Farrell on the Gonna Geek Network has used the MEE Audio M6. Now, they actually just created a version 2 of these, and I haven't had a chance to find anybody who has used version 2. He said overall the sound was pretty reasonable. They're on sale all the time, even at regular price, they're pretty inexpensive. As long as you get the Pro version, I think it's the MEE Audio M6 Pro. I think there's a regular one that just has the microphone in it that are more just headphones. But honestly, everybody that I've talked to that have had these, and I've talked to a few different people, have said that after a while they get fairly uncomfortable. And I know that that was something that he had mentioned as well. And I know from a week-to-week basis, generally he's using his headphones again as well. So it's definitely worth considering if you are looking for just something to get you through your recording. If you do a video show and you don't want to have the headphones, or for some other reason you don't want to have the headphones and you don't have a lot of money, those are ones that a lot of people who are looking for inexpensive in-ear monitors have used.
So we gave a lot of information about what studio monitoring headphones are, about what we would recommend looking at in terms of specifications or capabilities of studio monitoring headphones. We went over some examples of studio monitoring headphones that we would recommend to our listeners. And Stephen ran down another version of studio monitoring headphones called in-ear monitors, and we ran down those. And if you have something to say, if you use a headphone that you are just gaga over and we didn't talk about it, please let us know. You can catch us on Twitter at BetterPod. You can send us an email, podcast@betterpodcasting.com, and you can check out Stephen on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/betterpodcasting.
Welcome to this week's Better Podcasting Download.
All right, so why did we set our scopes on this? It wasn't funny the first time, so I thought I would try it a second time.
Right. Yeah, it's still not funny. I'll give you points for trying, but it's not funny. Yeah, so a couple of things happened. I saw an article related to this, and then we actually got a shout out on the Bandrew Says podcast this week that said, oh, maybe Stephen and SP should try this out. And what we're talking about is the audio only version, the audio only streaming version of Periscope to Twitter. We tried it out on Monday night. It was kind of a debacle trying to learn how to use everything. Now, full disclosure, I am not a Periscope guy. I do not stream on Periscope at all. So this was a little bit different for me to get ready and go within a night. Now, I did try a couple of short streams through an iPhone 5S. It worked. We thought we had everything going. But then when we actually went to the longer stream on the GonnaGeek.com show, there was no audio. I was like, what is going on here? So I tried it again. We couldn't get it going. GonnaGeek.com show is a little late this week. Oh, well, I mean, we were trying something. And then in the middle of the show, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try it. So I disconnected the iPhone 5S. I connected my iPad Mini 4 and I gave it a go, and it actually worked, and it worked for 35 minutes. So we do have some experience here. So the test on Monday, here's what I learned. You can't tell if the audio is clipping or not. Now, if you're just speaking into the device microphone, odds are it will self-regulate and you won't have to worry about it clipping. Is that what I do? No, because I want to get both my voice and Steven's voice, and on Gonna Geek, I wanted Chris's voice in there too. So what I did is I went through the line out of the H6 and I went through a 3.5 millimeter splitter, and then I used a 3.5 millimeter to 1/4 inch adapter. Then I went from a 1/4 inch TRS to an XLR into my iRig Pre, which was a microphone TRRS input into the iPhone 5S and now the iPad Mini 4. Wow, that's a lot of cords just to get it into your freaking mobile device, Steven.
Yeah, it's too bad that one of us, or maybe the one that was producing the GonnaGeek.com show, didn't have a beautiful Zoom L12 that had a bunch of outputs on it with many to spare, that he could have just gone and hooked it up and put it to his phone. It's, that would have been a lot easier.
It would have been maybe a little easier, but you'd still run into the adapter issue of having to go into the TRRS, whether it's a 3.5 millimeter or that to whatever adapter you have, because you have a Android. I don't even know what you have. Do you have USB-C or USB mini? I have no idea what those things use.
Yeah, but the point of the matter is that we couldn't do it easy because I don't own an iDevice. As it stands, it's only on iPhone. Even if it was on Android, I would have had to convert it over to Android because it's not on desktop yet.
No, it's not on desktop. Yeah, that's right.
Ridiculous.
So, yeah, it definitely is not on desktop. It might be on Android. I think it might. So you need to check that out on your phone if you have the Periscope audio only that you can link up with Twitter. The other thing is I did a test on an old throwaway Twitter account. And then when I tried to move to the Gonna Geek Twitter account, which Steven wanted me to broadcast on, and I totally get it. I mean, that's why you use it, right? You want to go where your audience is. It took me forever to find out how to log out and then go to Twitter and change the Twitter accounts over on the device to the Gonna Geek account, and then go back to the Periscope app and then re-log in. And then you have to skip it wants you to enable notifications. No, I don't want to enable notifications. Off. No. So I skipped through it, and I have to skip through it every time. It's bugging the crap out of me. So yeah, Periscope is not my favorite app at all. But if you're trying an audio only stream to Twitter right now, as far as I know, this is the only way to do it. And it actually is kind of working. We're actually streaming this show on Twitter right now too, to the Better Pod Twitter account. So I don't even know if there's audio working on it or not. There might not be because nobody's affirmed yes or no. But in case it is working, even if it does, you can only re-listen to the stream on iOS. At least that's what we experienced with the GonnaGeek.com stream before. There was a 35-minute stream. Could not get it to stream on my PC. I used Internet Explorer. I used Chrome. Could not get it to stream at all. I used multiple computers too, so it's not just my computer. And Steven, you even tried too, and you couldn't get it to stream on your computer, right? So
yeah, it wasn't. I'm so frustrated with that because of the fact that, okay, I will somehow try not to be irate about the fact that it's only on mobile. We'll go mobile, even though it might only be on iOS. It will be absolutely ridiculous to me and unacceptable that we couldn't play our stream back on a desktop. That's absolutely garbage, complete trash, and ridiculous that we couldn't do that. Like, it's on your Twitter feed. It's on the Twitter feed. So these people are like, oh, look, I'm listening to this podcast about podcasting, playing it back. Looks like they know nothing because it's blank audio. So frustrating. And also the other thing that I will say is ridiculous, and now I just sound really grumpy and like an old man on his porch, get off my lawn, SP, is the fact that the little waveform, when we were having problems and it not picking up, that little waveform is just a GIF or something like that. Like it's fake. It's actually, I mean, you were time shifted, so you didn't hear it, but we all went silent and it was still going. The little waveform behind,
there you go.
Yeah, we all went silent and the waveform that was going behind was fake. So we all went silent. So, or at least at the time that we were doing it. Okay, I'll say the time we were doing it, the waveform did not properly line up when we were all silent waiting for SP to fix it.
Right, exactly. It depicted sound. It was picking up sound, yet no sound was actually playing. So there's some sort of rendering or streaming issue with this. This is all beta. They threw this together because of a developers conference. They were saying, oh, it would be really neat. Let's put this together. And they said, sure, we could do this. So they slapped it together. I don't know what sort of supportability is ever going to be with this. From what I've heard so far, the audio isn't that great, but at least it's audio going out. So I've left them up. I've left all the posts up on both Gonna Geek and the Better Pod Twitter account. So if you want to go and listen to them yourself on a mobile device, apparently, go ahead and let us know what you think. But I just thinking, hey, this is a way to get audio out. I would not want somebody consuming my product on a regular basis using this device.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to Better Podback before I punch a wall or something. All right, let's start off with one of my favorite tweets of the week. And it comes, of course, from the one and only Emily Prokop, which you can find at Story Behind Pod on Twitter. We tweeted earlier today because earlier when we were recording on Monday, the GonnaGeek.com show, we put it out there to the live audience there because there was some overlap that we thought we were going to have to record a little bit earlier. Well, today it all came together that we were able to be at our same bat time, same bat channel. And so we tweeted that out. To which, of course, Emily had a better thing, which she said, same moose time, same moose channel, which is a callback to all of the old moose jokes that I used to make on the show. And then my contract renewal, I was forbidden by SB to use moose jokes.
I was going to say old moose. I mean, with Canadians, is there such a thing as an old moose joke? I mean, you guys tell moose jokes every day up there, right? Right when you're drinking your maple syrup?
What do you call more than one moose? Meese. Ha-ha!
We also had a tweet from at DX Ferris, my buddy from the past, and he said, I just pointed a podcasting pal at your various microphone roundups. My official StarPie edition AT2005 is still going strong. People ask what I use, and I tell them I do what Better Podcasting told me. I do have to caveat the fact that I gave him an AT2005 is because he was going to guest on a show of mine. I believe it was the Starling Tribune. I'm like, dude, you are not using a chat headset. He's like, well, I don't have money for a microphone right now. I'm like, what is your address? And he's like, yada, 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 whatever it was. And he had no idea what I was going to send. I sent him an AT2005. I believe it was only like 35 or 40 bucks. It was worth it to me to not have to deal with a chat headset in editing.
And plus his edition is actually signed. It's, you know, it was a Kickstarter perk. It was engraved with SP signature and you paid $50 more.
Right. Like I would do that. Anyway, at Bandrew Says tweeted us as well. And he said, congratulations, SJ, on 10 years of podcasting. Thanks so much for sharing your experience and expertise with SP on Better Pod. Yeah, thanks for sharing your expertise with me on Better Pod.
It was just SP. I restricted last week's episode. It was only SP that could hear it.
Go figure. I was listening to it in the car today, and I said it was my favorite interview I've ever done. I stand by that. And if I was the only one to ever hear it, y'all are missing out.
We also had at Creator Case Pod say, I'm going to try and share a creator I enjoy every single Friday. First up, it's at Better Pod. If you're looking to getting into podcasting or you want to improve your podcast, check out this show for amazing weekly advice on how to podcast better. Now, we actually had quite a thread of people who echoed this statement, and I'm not going to sit here and toot our own horn and read them all out, but what I do want to say is I really appreciated those messages, and it was really, really touching to me. Like last week in the 10 years debrief that I did, I talked about how awesome and engaged this audience is. This is just an example of it. And every single one of you, appreciate you listening. We both do. And so thank you very much for your patronage because, you know, you're paying? No, you're not paying.
Maybe their name is Patrick and they're Patricking us. We also got an email. I should say, Stephen, you got an email, and I won't read this one out, but basically it was somebody asking for some advice that was actually taking our advice and had the Audio-Technica microphones, had a Zoom recorder, and had a lot of things, but all of a sudden they couldn't record in the same room. They were geographically separated. They wanted to record over the internet, and he was asking you what you do to multi-track everybody, because on the Gonna Geek show, we have between 2 and 3 co-hosts in addition to yourself, Stephen, and you are able to record those 3 or 4 people on their own tracks, plus your soundboard on a separate track. So how do you do that?
Obviously with secret space technology.
It's not secret if you have it.
Okay, so I want to also preface this by saying that the reason that this person emailed me, thank you very much for reaching out, is the fact that they actually had Zencaster issues. So I just wanted to mention that because of the fact that we've talked about it. There are some Zencaster problems, and it's just another example of people having more and more issues with it. The way that I do the multi-tracking is extremely convoluted, and that's what I replied and said. What it is on my computer, I have essentially a different sound card for every single person that we have on the call. And there's actually a way that you can run concurrent Skype sessions. So like on Gonna Geek, I have a session going with SP and I have a session going individually with Chris. And so those within Skype, you can tell them to use different sound cards. And it actually works really well. It remembers it by account. So I always connect with the same account to SP each week because that one is set to go out through a certain sound card. We'll call it sound card A. Then with Chris, I have that account, a different account, set to go out through sound card B. That then, through some various connections, ground loop isolators, for example, ends up going into my Zoom L12, which then the L12 has a bunch of different outputs, so I can essentially subtract SP from his feed so that he's not hearing himself back, and that goes out through an individual output. We'll call that output A, and then that goes back into sound card 1. So that's how I do it, is everybody is individually coming out through their own Skype session so that they can go into my Zoom L12 and be recorded on my L12, which records each track independently. I used to have this set up through a sort of similar route, but with my Zoom H6 when I was using that. So you can do it with stuff different than an L12, but it's a lot more complicated to do. I do want to say this, though, that it is very complex. And by most accounts, they are looking with Skype to apparently be able to separate the audio streams independently. A lot of people who have been in touch with Skype have said that there are different ways, apparently now, maybe to do video, but that the audio is still aligned, or still merged together. So the audio tracks are not individual yet. But by all accounts that I've seen from Skype, they are looking to separate that out. So I think that would be really helpful. So at this point, if you're using Skype and you're thinking of multi-tracking on your end, my tip of advice would be to wait. Wait and see what happens, because Skype is right now in the middle of a whole bunch of changes. And if you could just have one group call and Skype does the backup for you, assuming it's good quality, at least you have that. And that would be probably a lot easier and a lot less money.
Right. So a couple of things. First of all, if you are going to use multiple USB sound cards, make sure that they use different drivers, and that way you can get your different sessions actually acknowledged through the different devices. So that's one thing. Also, as far as the Skype and the multi-track goes, I'd be wary of that. I think they're going to run into the same issues like the Zencaster and apparently Ringer has had, where you can't get the tracks to line up. So I don't understand why that's so difficult, but apparently the ability to get those separate audio tracks and then have them misaligned is apparently very easy to do, which you do not want to deal with, because then you're shifting things all around in post and it makes your editing even more difficult if you're doing a proper job of editing in the first place. And that might actually drive me to not podcast. I've done a couple episodes like that when Audacity shifts back and forth and my co-hosts were using Audacity. Hint, that is why they're using Zoom H5s now.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to deal with that noise shifting, the audio shifting for each track. So a couple of things just to note there, that maybe Skype isn't going to be the panacea once they do that. I would try it out or listen to other people that have tried it out first. And then the final thing I'll say is you can do what Steven does. If you're just doing an audio podcast, you do not have to use the same computer. You can use multiple connecting devices. It's still a mix minus through a mixer and through a digital recorder or the L12 or whatever, but you can use multiple devices. You don't have to run concurrent Skype sessions. The reason that Steven does that is we all have to be on the same computer so he can record our video as well. But if you're not doing video, who cares?
And the other reason why as well is because many computers is hot. It's really hot.
It can be hot. So, by the way, this email was sent to us, and we always say we're going to say the name of the podcast when somebody contacts us. So this was the No Driving Gloves podcast. That's www.nodrivinggloves.com with 2 G's.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming by another episode of Better Podcasting. If you're not familiar with us, we are part of the Gonna Geek Network. The Gonna Geek Network has a bunch of amazing geeky content. You should definitely check that out at gonnageeknetwork.com. But for episode number 147 of Better Podcasting, I'm Stephen John Drew saying SP, You just blew our mind technically.
And I'm SP saying, if you have a question for us, please let us know. There's at least one more question we're going to devote an episode to coming up soon.
DJ SP out.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Better Podcasting. We want to hear from you. You can find all of our contact information at betterpodcasting.com. If you like the show, please consider giving us a 5-star review in iTunes. We encourage you to check out all of the other geeky podcasts available at GonnaGeekNetwork.com. This has been a Gonna Geek production. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next week.
Everybody who's watching, mute your A-word devices. Mute them. Mute them right now. Alexa, let's record Better Podcasting.
Okay. I'm glad you're recording it tonight, Steven. You are the true talent of the show. You fine men.
She doesn't lie. She does not lie, SP.
I think that was the woman robot voice version of fine. Not like fine, like fine, you know, like.
I don't know. I heard it as, oh, you're fine specimen, Steven. That's what I heard.
I heard it as fine.
One of the other pros with the SE215s is even though they're inexpensive, the cord is completely detachable from the actual earpiece. There is a way that you can actually go in and detach from the earpiece, and I'm trying to do it on the camera and I can't do it, but you can actually go ahead. Let's just go ahead and back up there and edit that out.
Edit!